The Greyhound dropped me in Cave City at 4:17 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in October. I had a duffel bag, $300 in checking, and a job offer contingent on a background check that had already cleared. The supervisor's name was Harold Kern. He told me on the phone to meet him at the visitor center by 5 and to bring my own flashlight as a backup. I had a cheap LED model from a hardware store in Louisville. It felt inadequate before I even saw the cave. Kern was waiting at the staff entrance when I arrived. He was in his 60s, gray beard trimmed close, park service jacket faded at the elbows. He shook my hand once, firmly, then handed me a manila envelope. "You're the replacement for David Marsh," he said. "Yes, sir." "You read the general job description. Night tour guide, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., 4 nights a week. Lantern tours, specialty groups, maintenance walks." Kern nodded slowly. He watched my face like he was looking for something specific. "David worked here 11 years. Good man, reliable." "What happened to him?" Kern didn't answer immediately. He unlocked the staff door and held it open. "He relocated. Family reasons. Let's get you processed." The visitor center basement held the employee lockers, the equipment room, and a break area with a microwave and 2 folding tables. Kern gave me locker 19. He issued me a radio, Motorola, channel 4 for general, channel 7 for emergencies, a hard hat with a headlamp mount, 2 spare battery packs, a park service jacket, and a laminated map of the tour routes. The map showed the historic entrance, the main passages, Broadway, Gothic Avenue, Mammoth Dome, River Hall, and the restricted maintenance tunnels in red ink. "Paychecks every 2 weeks, Kern said. "Direct deposit. You'll shadow me tonight and tomorrow. After that, you're solo on the standard routes. Questions?" The red sections on the map, those are off limits. To tourists, staff only, and only during certain hours. He paused. "There are procedures, you'll learn them." I didn't push. I needed the job. My mother's medical bills had put me $12,000 in debt, and cave guide work paid $17 an hour with overtime. I could clear the balance in 18 months if I lived cheap. Kern showed me the tour staging area, the lantern storage, the first aid station, and the emergency exit locations. There were 4 emergency exits total: Echo River Spring, Violet City entrance, Carmichael entrance, and a maintenance shaft near Snowball Dining Room. Each one had a numbered padlock and a sign-out sheet. "We run 3 guides on night shift," Kern said. "You, me, and Rebecca Vasquez. Rebecca handles the historic tour. You'll take the domes and dripstones route once you're certified. I float and manage the maintenance schedule." "Just 3 of us?" "That's all the night program needs. We get maybe 30 tourists total on a busy night. Most nights, it's under 15. He checked his watch, a digital Casio with a cracked band, and gestured toward the break room. "Eat something. Shift starts at 8. I'll come get you at 7:45. I ate a gas station sandwich from my bag and drank 2 cups of weak coffee. At 7:43, Kern appeared in the doorway. He was holding a different folder now, thinner than the first one. He set it on the table in front of me. "Read this before we go down," he said. "All of it. Sign the last page." The folder contained 6 typed pages, single-spaced. The header read, "Night Tour, Operational Protocols. Revised August 2019. I started reading. The first 2 pages were standard: radio check intervals, head count procedures, emergency evacuation routes, protocols for medical incidents, normal Park Service material. Page 3 was different. It was titled Supplemental Guidelines, Mandatory. Below that was a numbered list. 1. Conduct head count at the start of every tour and again when entering or exiting any chamber. The number must match. If the number does not match, proceed to the nearest emergency exit immediately without acknowledging the discrepancy verbally. 2. Between 2:10 a.m. and 2:40 a.m., do not enter Gothic Avenue. If already inside Gothic Avenue at 2:10 a.m., exit via the North Passage only, and do not stop walking until you reach Broadway. Do not shine your headlamp toward Booth's Amphitheater during this window. 3. The maintenance tunnel connecting Audubon Avenue to Blackall Avenue is closed between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. Do not enter this tunnel. If you hear sounds originating from this tunnel, footsteps, voices, mechanical noise, note the time and report it at shift end. Do not investigate. 4. If a tourist asks to visit a location not on the scheduled route, decline politely and log the request. If the tourist insists more than twice, end the tour early and escort the group to the historic entrance. Do not engage further with the requesting tourist. 5. Radio check-ins occur at 45 minutes past each hour. Use channel 4 only. If you do not receive a response within 90 seconds, switch to channel 7 and transmit the phrase, "Echo check, position your current location." If no response within 60 seconds on channel 7, proceed to the nearest emergency exit. 6. If you hear your name called from any direction other than forward of your group, do not respond. Do not turn around. Note the time and continue the tour. 7. Headlamps must remain on white light setting while in the cave. Do not use red light mode. If your headlamp switches to red light without your input, turn it off immediately and use your backup flashlight for the remainder of the tour. 8. The historic entrance gate must be locked by 4:15 a.m., regardless of whether all staff have exited. If you are inside the cave at 4:15 a.m., use an emergency exit. Do not attempt to exit via the historic entrance after this time. 9. If the temperature in any chamber drops more than 8 degrees within 5 minutes, evacuate the chamber. Note the time and the chamber name. Do not return to that chamber until the next shift. 10. During maintenance walks, count your steps in restricted tunnels. The distance from Audubon Junction to the Cathedral Dome Service Passage is 412 steps. If you count fewer than 412 steps, you have not reached the service passage. Turn around immediately and do not look back. 11. If you observe a bat flying in a counterclockwise pattern in any chamber, suspend the tour and radio for backup. Wait for acknowledgement before proceeding. A bat flying counterclockwise is not a bat. 12. Do not acknowledge the fourth guide. Night shift consists of 3 guides only. I read the list twice. Then I looked up at Kern. Is this serious? Kern's expression didn't change. Sign the last page. These rules, the head count thing, the tunnel closures. Sign the last page. His tone wasn't threatening. It was flat, patient, like he had explained this before and knew the conversation had only one possible ending. I signed the last page. Kern took the folder back and filed it in a cabinet behind the break room door. Keep your radio on. Stay with me tonight. Don't ask questions in front of tourists. The first tour left the visitor center at 8:15. 9 tourists, a family of 4 from Indiana, a retired couple from Nashville, and 3 college students who said they were geology majors. Rebecca Vasquez was already at the historic entrance when we arrived. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with her hair pulled back and her headlamp already mounted. She nodded at me once, said nothing, and began her tour without waiting. Kern and I took our group down into the cave. The historic entrance is a massive stone archway that descends into the hillside at a 40-degree slope. The air temperature drops 20 degrees in the first 100 feet. The path is paved and railed, lit by dim electric lamps every 30 yards. Kern walked at the front. I stayed at the rear, counting heads. 9 tourists. I counted them at the entrance, again at the bottom of the slope, and again when we reached the rotunda, the first major chamber, a circular room roughly 80 feet in diameter with a ceiling height of 40 feet. The walls were gray limestone, streaked with mineral deposits. The electric lights made the stone look wet. 9 tourists. Kern began his standard narration. History of the cave's discovery, early saltpeter mining, Stephen Bishop and the enslaved guides, the development of the national park. I had heard versions of this on training videos. The tourists took photographs and asked about bats. Bats roost deeper in the system, Kern said. We don't disturb them on this route. At 8:45, Kern's radio clicked twice. He held it up, pressed the transmit button, and said, "Kern, rotunda, 9 tourists, clear." A voice responded. Female, professional, slightly distorted by the cave's acoustics. "Rebecca, Broadway, 12 tourists, clear." Kern holstered the radio. "Check in," he said to me quietly. "Every 45. You heard the format." I nodded. We moved deeper into the cave. The first night passed without incident. Kern showed me the standard route, rotunda to Broadway, to Methodist Church, to Giant's Coffin, to the turnaround point at Star Chamber. We completed the circuit by 10:40, returned the tourists to the visitor center, and began the maintenance walk at 11:15. Maintenance walks were inventory runs. Kern carried a clipboard with a checklist. Handrails secure, light fixtures operational, emergency markers visible, path clear of debris. I followed him with the backup flashlight and noted what he marked. We reached Audubon Junction at 11:48. A sign on a steel grate read, "Maintenance access. Authorized personnel only." Beyond the grate, I could see a narrower tunnel descending into darkness. The tunnel from Rule 3, the one closed between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. Kern didn't look at the tunnel. He marked something on his clipboard and kept walking. "The Blackall Passage," I said. "Is it ever used?" "Daytime crews, survey teams sometimes." Kern's flashlight beam stayed fixed on the path ahead. "Not at night." "Because of the rule." "Because of the schedule." I didn't press further. At 12:15, we finished the maintenance walk and returned to the break room. Rebecca was already there, eating an apple and reading a paperback novel. She glanced up when we entered, then went back to her book. "Tomorrow night you shadow Rebecca," Kern said. "Night after that, you're on your own route. Domes and dripstones. 40-minute loop, maximum 12 tourists." "Okay." "Read the protocols again before bed. Keep your radio charged." I spent the rest of the shift in the break room, rereading the supplemental guidelines and studying the map. At 4 a.m., Kern locked the historic entrance gate. I heard the heavy clang from inside the building and dismissed us for the night. I slept in a motel room in Cave City until noon. I ate lunch at a diner. I walked around the town for an hour, looking at the tourist shops and the wax museum signs, and the billboards advertising zipline tours. At 5, I went back to the motel and slept until 7. The second night, I shadowed Rebecca. She was efficient and precise. Her tour covered the same general route as Kern's, but she moved faster and spoke less. Her head counts were almost obsessive. She counted at every junction, every chamber, every narrowing of the path. I counted with her. Our numbers always matched. At 10:17, we reached Methodist Church, a tall, narrow chamber with formations that early explorers thought resembled a church interior. Rebecca stopped the group and began explaining the acoustic properties of the space. The ceiling was high enough that voices echoed strangely, folding back on themselves before fading. One of the tourists, a man in his 50s with a camera around his neck, stepped away from the group and walked toward the edge of the chamber. There was a low railing there, marking the boundary of the maintained path. Beyond the railing, the floor dropped away into an unlit passage. "Sir," Rebecca said, "please stay with the group." The man didn't turn around. He was staring into the darkness beyond the railing. "Sir!" Rebecca's voice was sharp now. The other tourists had stopped talking. I moved toward the man, keeping my headlamp beam low so it wouldn't blind him. "I thought I saw something," the man said. He was still looking into the passage. "Down there, a light." "There are no lights in that section," Rebecca said. "Please step back to the group." The man hesitated. Then he turned around and walked back to join the others. His face was pale in my headlamp beam. Rebecca resumed the tour immediately, as if nothing had happened, but I noticed she counted heads twice before we left the chamber. 11 tourists, 11 both times. At 10:45, Rebecca's radio clicked. She made the standard check-in. Kern responded from the break room. I listened to the exchange, format, location, head count, clear, and watched Rebecca's face. "Has that happened before?" I asked her quietly after the tourists had moved ahead. "Someone seeing lights where there aren't any." Rebecca didn't look at me. "It happens." "What is it?" "Phosphorescence sometimes. Mineral deposits react to headlamp light, create secondary reflections. The brain fills in patterns." She paused. "Or they're just seeing things. It's dark. People see things." I wanted to ask more, but Rebecca had already moved forward to rejoin the group. We finished the tour at 11:12. Kern was waiting at the entrance with his clipboard, already starting the maintenance checklist. Rebecca handed off her group to the visitor center attendant and headed for the break room without speaking. I followed Kern into the cave. At 12:03 a.m., we reached Audubon Junction again. The steel grate was the same as the night before, padlocked, warning sign visible. Tunnel beyond, descending into darkness. "Does anyone ever go down there at night?" I asked. "By accident, I mean." Kern made a mark on his clipboard. "David Marsh did once." I waited for him to continue. "This was about 3 years ago. David was running a private tour, corporate group, after hours. Big tip expected. One of the guests separated from the group near here. David followed the guest headlamp into the black all passage before he realized where he was." "What happened?" Kern's flashlight beam stayed fixed on the grate. "David came out 90 seconds later. He said the tunnel felt longer than it should have been. He counted his steps going in, 87, and counted them coming out. He counted 114 coming out. That's impossible." That's what David said. Kern turned away from the grate and continued down the main passage. "He followed the rules after that, always. Retired last month with a full pension and relocated to Arizona. I thought about asking more, but something in Kern's posture told me the conversation was over. The next night, I ran my first solo tour. Domes and dripstones departed from a secondary entrance on the west side of the park. A steel door set into the hillside about 400 yards from the visitor center. The route covered a smaller section of the cave system, Mammoth Dome, a vertical shaft over 100 feet deep. Ruins of Karnak, a chamber of massive limestone columns, and the frozen Niagara section, where flowstone formations cascaded down the walls like solidified waterfalls. I had 6 tourists, a married couple in their 60s, 2 teenage siblings with their mother, and a man traveling alone who said he was a photographer documenting national parks. I conducted head count at the entrance, 6 tourists. I conducted head count again at the first junction, 6 tourists. The tour proceeded normally for the first 40 minutes. I delivered the standard narration, answered questions about cave formation and wildlife, and maintained proper spacing in the narrower passages. The photographer asked if he could use flash. I told him no flash in the bat conservation areas, acceptable elsewhere. He complied without complaint. At 9:28, we reached Mammoth Dome. The dome is experienced from a platform built into the cave wall, overlooking the shaft. Below, the darkness extends down into the earth beyond the reach of any headlamp. Above, the ceiling rises in a rough cone shape, barely visible in the dim light. The platform holds 12 people comfortably. I positioned my group at the railing and began explaining the dome's formation, water erosion, limestone dissolution, the slow collapse of the ceiling over millions of years. Then I heard the footsteps. They came from below the platform, echoing up from the shaft. Slow, measured steps, like someone walking on stone. The rhythm was regular, 1 step every 2 seconds, and the sound grew neither louder nor softer. It simply continued. I stopped talking mid-sentence. The teenagers heard it too. The boy leaned over the railing, trying to see the source. His mother pulled him back. "What is that?" the married woman asked. I did not answer. I was counting the footsteps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At 8, the sound stopped. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Silence. Just the distant drip of water and the faint hum of the platform's safety lights. "Sometimes we get acoustic artifacts," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were tight on the railing. Sound travels strangely in vertical shafts, probably a maintenance team in a lower section. I did not believe this. Kern had told me no maintenance work was scheduled in the dome area this week. "Let's continue the tour," I said. I counted heads before we left the platform. 6 tourists. I counted again at the passage exit. 6 tourists. The rest of the tour was uneventful. I returned the group to the visitor center at 10:04, documented the completion time, and sat in the break room for 15 minutes before Kern arrived. "How'd it go?" he asked. I told him about the footsteps. Kern listened without interrupting. When I finished, he opened a drawer in the filing cabinet and pulled out a logbook, spiral-bound, hand-labeled incident reports, night shift. "Write it down," he said. "Time, location, duration, what you heard, anything else you observed." "Is this normal?" Kern set the logbook on the table. "Define normal." I wrote the report. Time, 9:28 p.m. to 9:29 p.m. Location, Mammoth Dome platform. Duration, approximately 16 seconds. Sound observed, footsteps from below the platform. Estimated 8 steps. Regular interval of 2 seconds per step. No visual observation. No temperature change. No equipment malfunction. I signed and dated the entry. Kern filed the logbook without reading it. "You followed procedure," he said. "That's the job. Keep following procedure." The next 3 weeks passed in a pattern. I ran 2 or 3 solo tours each night, depending on bookings. I conducted head counts obsessively. At every entrance, every exit, every junction, the numbers always matched. I made radio check-ins at 45 minutes past every hour. Kern or Rebecca always responded within 90 seconds. I avoided Gothic Avenue between 2:10 and 2:40 a.m. I never entered the Black All passage. I never used the red light setting on my headlamp. Small incidents accumulated. A tourist on my second Friday heard her name called from a side passage and turned around before I could stop her. She saw nothing, but complained of a headache for the rest of the tour. A maintenance walk on the following Tuesday revealed that someone had moved the distance marker at the Audubon Junction tunnel. It now read 406 steps instead of 412. Kern replaced the sign without comment. On my 11th night, a head count discrepancy occurred. I was running the Domes and Dripstones route with 8 tourists. I counted them at the entrance, 8. I counted them at the first junction, 8. I counted them at Mammoth Dome, 9. I stopped at the platform entrance and counted again. 9 people stood in front of me, headlamps bright in the darkness. 8 tourists, I had checked their names against the booking roster, and 1 additional figure standing at the back of the group. The additional figure was a man. He appeared to be in his 30s, dressed in dark clothing. His headlamp was off. His face was in shadow. I did not acknowledge the discrepancy verbally. Rule 1. "Okay, folks," I said. My voice did not shake. "Change of plans. We're going to head back to the entrance a different way. Emergency exit protocol. Nothing to worry about. Just a scheduled maintenance check that I forgot about. Follow me, please." The tourists murmured but complied. I turned and led them back toward the nearest emergency exit. Violet City entrance, approximately 600 yards back, the way we had come. I did not count heads again. I did not look at the back of the group. I walked at a steady pace, slightly faster than normal, and kept my headlamp fixed forward. The walk took 11 minutes. At the emergency exit, I unlocked the gate, ushered the tourists through, and counted them as they passed. 8. I locked the gate behind us and led them up the surface path to the visitor center parking lot. I apologized for the early end to the tour, offered them vouchers for a free daytime visit, and retreated to the break room as soon as they were gone. Kern was waiting. "Head count problem?" he asked. I nodded. "Violet City exit?" "Yes." Kern made a note in the incident logbook. "You handled it correctly. The vouchers were a nice touch." "What was it?" Kern closed the logbook. "We don't name things. We follow procedures. The procedures work." "Kern, the procedures work." He looked at me directly for the first time since I'd arrived. His eyes were tired but steady. "You verified that tonight. You had a discrepancy. You followed protocol. You got everyone out. That's the job." I wanted to argue. I wanted to demand answers. But Kern's expression made it clear that no answers would be provided. "Get some rest," he said. "You're off tomorrow. Come back fresh." I spent my day off in Cave City, walking and thinking. I ate at the diner twice. I called my mother and told her the job was going fine. I did not tell her about the head counts. I did not tell her about the footsteps. When I returned to work, Kern handed me a revised protocol sheet. "Amendments," he said. "Read them tonight. signed by the end of shift. The amendments were typed on a single page, formatted like the original list. 13. If a headcount discrepancy occurs, do not attempt to identify the additional figure. Proceed directly to the nearest emergency exit. Do not slow down. Do not look back. 14. The Mammoth Dome platform has a maximum capacity of 10 persons. If your group exceeds 8 tourists, do not enter the dome. Reroute to frozen Niagara only. 15. If you hear footsteps from below in any vertical shaft, terminate narrative immediately and move to the next chamber. Do not wait for the sound to stop. 16. The distance marker at Audubon Junction must read 412 steps. If it reads any other number, do not enter the maintenance tunnel, even during permitted hours. Report the discrepancy to the shift supervisor. 17. Radio check-ins between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. require a countersign. After stating your position, wait for the responding party to say confirmed. If they say anything else, switch to channel 7 and transmit echo check as per rule 5. 18. If your headlamp dims without warning, check the battery indicator. If the battery indicator shows full charge but the light is dim, turn off the headlamp and do not turn it on again until you have exited the cave. 19. The maintenance closet in River Hall contains emergency supplies. Inventory includes 6 bottles of water, 4 granola bars, 2 flashlights, 1 first aid kit, 50 feet of rope, and 8 ounces of salt. If any item is missing, or if an additional item is present, do not use the closet. Exit River Hall immediately. 20. If a tourist's headlamp turns red, that tourist is no longer a tourist. I signed the amendment page. November arrived cold and wet. The tourist traffic dropped to almost nothing. Some nights, I ran a single tour with 3 or 4 visitors. Some nights, there were no bookings at all. On those nights, I walked the maintenance routes alone, checking markers and counting steps, and listening to the silence of the cave. Rebecca Vasquez quit on November 8th. She didn't give a reason. Kern said she had accepted a position at a different park, Carlsbad Caverns, New Mexico, something with daytime hours. I never saw her again after her last shift. Her replacement was a man named Torres, early 20s, fresh out of a park service training program, eager to work. He shadowed Kern for 2 nights, and me for 1. On his 4th night, Torres broke a rule. It was a Tuesday, near midnight. Torres was running a solo tour on the historic route. 5 tourists, standard path, nothing unusual in the booking notes. I was on break in the visitor center, drinking coffee and watching the security monitor. The monitor showed the cave entrance, the parking lot, and the staging area. No interior cameras. At 11:53, Torres's voice came over the radio, crackly with distance. Torres, Gothic Avenue, 5 tourists, clear. I set down my coffee. Gothic Avenue. It was 11:53. The 2:10 a.m. restriction was still hours away. That part was fine. But something in Torres's voice sounded wrong, tight, rushed. I picked up the radio. Torres, acknowledge. Everything okay? A pause. Then, yeah, we're good. Just, one of the tourists thought they saw something in Booth's amphitheater. I told them it was just the lighting. What did they see? Another pause, longer this time. A person. They said they saw a person standing in the amphitheater, but there's no one there. I checked. My stomach tightened. Torres, did you shine your headlamp toward Booth's amphitheater? Silence. Torres, answer me. His voice came back, quieter now. I had to check. The tourist was scared. I thought, "Get out of Gothic Avenue. Now. Use the North Passage. Don't stop walking. It's not even 2 a.m. yet. The rule says between 2:10 and 2:40. Torres, I'm coming to you. Start moving. North Passage. Now." I grabbed my jacket and my backup flashlight. I was out the door and down the historic entrance path in under a minute. The cave entrance loomed ahead, dark and cold. I switched on my headlamp and descended at a near run, counting my steps automatically, force of habit, as I crossed the rotunda and headed toward Broadway. At 12:09, I reached the junction for Gothic Avenue. The passage stretched ahead into darkness, narrower than Broadway, the ceiling lower. I could see headlamp beams bobbing in the distance, Torres and his group, maybe 300 yards ahead. "Torres," I said into the radio. "I'm at the junction. I can see you. Keep moving." His voice came back immediately. "Copy. We're moving. We're almost at the exit." I followed them at a distance, keeping my headlamp fixed forward. The cave was quiet except for our footsteps and the faint drip of water. The tourists' voices echoed ahead of me, nervous but controlled. At 12:14, I heard the second set of footsteps. They came from behind me. Slow, measured, the same rhythm I had heard in Mammoth Dome weeks ago. One step every 2 seconds, growing neither louder nor softer. I did not turn around. I did not slow down. Ahead, Torres and the tourists reached the North Passage exit. I saw them turn the corner, their headlamp beams disappearing from view. I increased my pace, walking as fast as I could without running. The footsteps behind me matched my speed exactly. At 12:17, I reached the North Passage exit. I turned the corner without looking back and walked another 50 yards before I stopped, breathing hard. The footsteps had stopped. I checked my radio. "Torres, you out?" "We're at Broadway, heading for the entrance." "Keep going. Don't stop until you're topside." I followed them at a distance, maintaining spacing until we reached the rotunda. Torres's group was already climbing the entrance slope. I counted them from behind. 5 tourists, Torres at the rear, 6 heads total. I counted again. 6. Torres was waiting at the top of the slope when I emerged. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly. The tourists milled around the staging area, confused and annoyed. "What happened in there?" Torres asked. I shook my head. "Not here. Break room. After the tourists leave." Kern arrived at 1:45. I told him what had happened. The radio call, Torres checking Booth's amphitheater, my descent, the footsteps behind me. Torres confirmed his part, his voice flat with shock. Kern listened without interrupting. When we finished, he pulled out the incident logbook and handed it to me. "Document everything," he said. "Both of you, separate entries." "Kern, I heard something following me." "Document it." I wrote my report. So did Torres. Kern read both entries, nodded once, and filed the logbook. "Torres," he said, "you broke Rule 2. You shone your headlamp toward Booth's amphitheater, outside the restricted window, but you shone it anyway. The rule exists for a reason." "I didn't know." "You knew the rule. You chose to ignore it." Kern's voice was calm but absolute. "Tomorrow night, you shadow me again. No solo tours for a week. After that, we'll see." Torres nodded, mute. "Go home," Kern said. "Both of you. Sleep. Come back tomorrow." I drove back to the motel and lay on the bed for 3 hours without sleeping. I kept hearing the footsteps behind me, slow and measured, matching my pace exactly. I kept imagining what I would have seen if I had turned around. At 7 in the evening, my phone rang. Kern's number. Torres didn't show up for his shift, Kern said. Do you know where he is? No, I haven't talked to him since last night. I called his motel, no answer. I sent someone to check his room. His car's there, but no sign of him. I sat up. What do you mean? I mean he's gone. His things are still in the room. His car keys are on the nightstand. His wallet is on the dresser, but he's not there. I drove to the visitor center immediately. Kern was in the break room with a man I didn't recognize. Park service ranger, judging by the uniform, older than Kern, and carrying himself with authority. They stopped talking when I entered. This is District Supervisor Caldwell, Kern said. He's here about Torres. Caldwell shook my hand briefly. You were with Torres last night during the incident. Part of it. I followed them out of Gothic Avenue. Did you see anything unusual? Anything that might indicate where Torres went afterward? No, he went back to his car. I went back to my motel. That's the last I saw him. Caldwell made a note in a small leather notebook. We filed a missing persons report with local law enforcement. Standard procedure for park employees. In the meantime, night operations will continue with adjusted staffing. What does that mean? It means you and Kern are the only night guides until we can bring in replacements, Caldwell said. No solo tours. All routes run in pairs. Cancel any bookings that can't be accommodated. I looked at Kern. His face was unreadable. Understood, I said. Caldwell left at 8. Kern and I ran a paired tour on the historic route. 4 tourists, no incidents, and completed the maintenance walk together. Neither of us spoke more than necessary. At the Audubon junction, Kern checked the distance marker. 412 steps. He made a note on his clipboard and kept walking. At 2 a.m., we reached Gothic Avenue. Kern stopped at the passage entrance. His flashlight beam played across the stone walls, then settled on a spot on the floor about 20 yards ahead. I followed his gaze. There were footprints in the dust, fresh ones, smaller than a man's boot, leading into the passage toward Booth's Amphitheater. Those weren't there yesterday, I said. Kern said nothing. He turned around and walked back toward Broadway. I followed. At 2:10 a.m., we reached the break room. Kern locked the exterior doors, checked all the windows, and sat down at the table with the incident logbook. Torres broke the rule, he said quietly. But he didn't break it during the restricted window. He shouldn't have triggered anything. So what happened? Kern opened the logbook to a page near the front. The handwriting wasn't his. It was older, faded, different pen ink. A date at the top read August 1987. David Marsh wasn't the first guide to have trouble in this cave, Kern said. Before him, there was a woman named Ellen Perry. She worked nights here for 6 years, never broke a rule, never had an incident. One night, she decided to document everything she observed that didn't fit the protocols. Sounds, shadows, temperature drops, anything that seemed anomalous but wasn't covered by the guidelines. He turned the page. More handwritten entries, dense and precise. She wanted to understand what was down there, why the rules worked, what happened when they didn't work. She thought if she could categorize the phenomena, she could predict them. What happened to her? Kern closed the logbook. She disappeared in March of 1992. Left in the middle of a shift. Her logbook was found on the break room table, open to the last entry. The last entry was incomplete. It said, "I finally saw." He didn't finish. What did she see? Kern stood up and put the logbook back in the filing cabinet. The rules work because they work. We don't question them. We don't document beyond what's required. We do our jobs and we go home. But Torres didn't break any rule during the window. Torres shone his light toward Booth's amphitheater. The rule doesn't say only during the restricted window. The rule says between 2:10 a.m. and 2:40 a.m., do not shine your headlamp toward Booth's amphitheater. The rest of the time, you can enter Gothic Avenue, but the rule doesn't say the amphitheater is safe. It says not to look at it during that window, because that's when it's worst. Outside the window, it's still not safe, just less dangerous. I processed this, so the rules aren't complete. The rules cover the most common situations, the situations that have patterns. Other things happen that don't have patterns. Those things, you survive by not attracting attention. Torres attracted attention. I thought about the footsteps I had heard behind me in Gothic Avenue. I had followed the rules. I had kept my headlamp forward. I had not turned around, and the footsteps had stopped. What about the footprints we saw tonight in Gothic Avenue? Kern didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark parking lot. Tomorrow night, he said, we implement emergency protocols. He handed me another sheet of paper, 3 rules, typed in the same format as the others. Emergency Protocol 1. During periods of elevated activity, defined as 2 or more incidents within a 48-hour period, all tours are suspended after midnight. Maintenance walks continue in pairs only, with both parties in visual contact at all times. Minimum spacing, 8 feet. Maximum spacing, 20 feet. Emergency Protocol 2. If either party observes a figure that does not match the head count, both parties proceed to the nearest emergency exit. Do not attempt to communicate with the figure. Do not acknowledge it verbally or through gesture. Maintain a steady pace of approximately 4 feet per second until exit is reached. Emergency Protocol 3. If radio communication is lost for more than 3 minutes during a paired maintenance walk, both parties return to the most recently verified safe location. Wait for radio restoration. If radio is not restored within 10 minutes, exit the cave via the nearest emergency route and do not return until the next shift. I read the protocols twice. How long does elevated activity usually last? Depends. Sometimes a day or 2, sometimes a week. Kern paused. The longest period on record was 19 days, in November 1994. 2 guides resigned during that period. One required hospitalization for exhaustion. What happened at the end? It stopped. Things go quiet eventually. The cave settles. That's how Ellen Perry described it in her notes. She called it settling, like sediment in water. I signed the emergency protocol sheet. Get some rest, Kern said. I need you alert tomorrow. The next 3 nights were the longest of my life. We ran no tours. District Supervisor Caldwell approved the closure, citing maintenance requirements in the official paperwork. Kern and I worked paired shifts, walking the maintenance routes in silence, counting steps and checking markers, and listening for sounds that shouldn't be there. The first night was quiet. We walked the full circuit, Broadway, Gothic Avenue, bypassing Booth's amphitheater at Kern's insistence, Methodist Church, River Hall, and returned to the break room by 2 a.m. No incidents, no anomalies. The only sound was our footsteps and the constant drip of groundwater. The second night was different. At 11:47 p.m., we reached the Audubon Junction. Kern checked the distance marker. 412 steps. Correct. He made his notation and we continued. At 11:53, we passed the River Hall maintenance closet. Kern opened the door to check the inventory. 6 bottles of water, 4 granola bars, 2 flashlights, 1 first aid kit, 50 feet of rope, 8 ounces of salt. Correct. He closed the door and locked it. At 12:01, we reached the frozen Niagara overlook. The flowstone formations gleamed in our headlamp beams, pale and wet-looking. Below the overlook, the path descended another 40 feet to a viewing platform at the base of the largest formation. Kern stopped. "Do you hear that?" I listened. For a moment, there was nothing, just the usual silence of the cave, thick and muffled. Then I heard it, a voice, distant, muffled by stone and distance, but recognizable as human speech. Words. Someone was speaking words. "I can't make it out," I said. "It's coming from below the platform." We stood motionless for 30 seconds, listening. The voice continued, steady, rhythmic, like someone reciting something from memory. I couldn't distinguish individual words, but the cadence was familiar, like a tour guide delivering narration. "There's no tour tonight," I said. "No." "So what is that?" Kern didn't answer. He pulled out his radio and pressed the transmit button. "Kern, frozen Niagara. 2 staff, no incidents. Checking audio anomaly. Please acknowledge." Silence, then static. Then a voice, not the dispatcher, not anyone I recognized, said clearly, "Head count confirmed. Proceed to Chamber B." Kern released the transmit button. His face was rigid in the headlamp light. "That's not the countersign," I said. "No." "What do we do?" Kern switched to Channel 7. "Echo check. Position frozen Niagara." More silence. Then, from the speaker, the same voice. "Echo check acknowledged. Proceed to Chamber B." Kern turned off the radio. "We're leaving," he said. "Now." We walked back the way we had come, maintaining the required spacing. I counted the distance between us obsessively. 8 feet, 10 feet, never more than 20. Kern set the pace, slightly faster than normal, but not running. The voice below the platform continued as we moved away, growing fainter with distance until it was indistinguishable from the ambient drip of water. At 12:19, we reached the Audubon junction again. Kern checked the distance marker, 406 steps. He stared at the sign for a long moment. I stared with him. "It said 412 when we passed it the first time," I said. "I watched you check it." "I know." "How is that possible?" Kern turned and walked past the junction without answering. I followed. We reached the break room at 12:38. Kern locked all the doors, checked all the windows, and sat down at the table without removing his jacket. "The rules are adaptive," he said finally. "They change when the situation changes. The cave isn't static. It responds. It notices when you notice it. The cave is a cave. It's limestone and water. The cave is a system. The things in the cave are part of the system. The rules are how we interact with the system without triggering a response. But when the response is already triggered, when there's already been a tension, the rules tighten. The margins get smaller." I thought about this. So breaking a rule doesn't just affect the person who breaks it. It affects everyone. It affects the system. The system becomes more alert, more active. Things that were dormant start moving. Things that were distant get closer. "Like settling," I said, "except in reverse." Kern nodded slowly. Ellen Perry called it stirring. She wrote about it in her notes. She said the cave had moods. That was probably the closest she ever came to understanding it. And when it's stirred up, like now, how do we make it settle again? Kern was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was tired. "We follow the rules. We don't add any attention. We wait. Eventually, it forgets. Forgets what? That we're here. The third night, we found Torres. It was 1:17 a.m. We were walking the maintenance route near the ruins of Karnak, a chamber filled with massive limestone columns, some of them 20 feet in diameter, when I saw the flashlight beam. It was on the far side of the chamber, about 100 yards away, moving slowly between the columns. The beam was white, standard issue, the same type we all carried. Kern, he had already stopped. We stood side by side, watching the light move. That's not one of ours, I said. No. Torres? Torres didn't have a flashlight when he disappeared. His was still in his locker. The light continued moving, circling one of the larger columns in a slow, deliberate pattern. After maybe 30 seconds, it stopped. Then it went out. Kern and I stood in darkness except for our own headlamps. The silence was absolute. No footsteps, no voice, just the ancient silence of the cave. We should check, I said. No. What if it's actually Torres? What if he's injured or lost? If it's Torres, he's not Torres anymore. I wanted to argue. Every instinct I had as a human being told me to go toward the light, to help whoever was there. But I remembered the head count discrepancy on my 11th night. I remembered the extra figure at the back of my group. I remembered how it had simply been gone when we reached the emergency exit. Okay, I said. We retreated. At 2:03 a.m., we reached the visitor center. Kern locked the entrance behind us and went straight to the filing cabinet. He pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. Thin, unmarked, with yellowed pages visible through the opening. These are Ellen Perry's original notes, he said. The ones that weren't destroyed. Read the entry for November 17th, 1991. I took the folder and found the page. The handwriting was neat but hurried, written in blue pen that had faded to gray. November 17th, 1991. Saw Michael again tonight. He was standing near the frozen Niagara overlook, same place as last week. He was wearing his jacket, but the patch was wrong. Ranger service instead of cave guide. He waved at me. I almost waved back. Then I remembered that Michael died in 1989. Rule. If you see someone you know in the cave and something about them is wrong, their uniform, their voice, the way they move, do not acknowledge them. Do not wave back. Do not speak to them. Walk away. Don't run. Walk. I looked up at Kern. Ellen Perry wrote some of the rules. Some of them. David Marsh wrote others. I wrote a few. He took the folder back. The rules are a collaborative document. They're built from experience, from what works and what doesn't. Torres's disappearance will probably generate at least one new rule once we understand what went wrong. And the light we saw tonight? Kern filed the folder. That goes in the incident log. No more, no less. We don't investigate lights in the cave. We document and we move on. I wrote the report. Time, 1:17 a.m. to 1:22 a.m. Location, ruins of Karnak, West Sector, approximately 100 yards from our position. Observation, white flashlight beam, standard type, moving in deliberate pattern around a limestone column. Beam extinguished after approximately 30 seconds. No sound observed, no figure visible, no temperature change. I signed the entry. Kern countersigned. How much longer? I asked. Until it settles. Kern looked out the window at the parking lot, gray and empty in the pre-dawn darkness. I don't know, a few more days probably, maybe a week. The last time it was this bad, in '94, it took almost 3 weeks. And if it doesn't settle, Kern didn't answer. The fourth night was quiet. So was the fifth. On the sixth night, District Supervisor Caldwell called to say they had found Torres. He was in Arizona, living in a motel outside Flagstaff. He had no memory of leaving Kentucky. He said he remembered walking into his motel room after the Gothic Avenue incident, lying down on the bed, and then waking up 3 days later in a parking lot in New Mexico with his car beside him. He didn't know how he got there. He didn't remember driving. His car was still in Cave City when we checked his room, I said. Caldwell hesitated. That's correct. We're not sure how he reached Arizona. He doesn't have a second vehicle. He wasn't on any flight manifests. The state police found him walking along the highway, disoriented but uninjured. Is he coming back? No, he submitted his resignation, effective immediately. After Caldwell hung up, I sat in the break room and thought about what Kern had told me. The cave responds. The things in the cave are part of the system. When the response is triggered, things that were dormant start moving. Torres had been moved 1,200 miles across 5 states with no memory of the journey, deposited alive and unharmed in a parking lot in Arizona. I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified. That night, the cave settled. I felt it before Kern confirmed it. The air in the passages was different, still and heavy, the way it should be. The silence was cleaner. No distant voices, no unexplained echoes, no footsteps that matched our pace too perfectly. At the Audubon Junction, the distance marker read 412 steps. At the River Hall maintenance closet, the inventory was exactly correct. At Frozen Niagara, there was no voice from below the platform. We completed the full maintenance circuit and returned to the break room by 1:48 a.m. Kern made his final notations on the clipboard and filed the report. Normal operations resume tomorrow, he said. Tours restart at 8 p.m. You'll run domes and dripstones. I'll take historic. What about a third guide? Caldwell's sending someone, a transfer from Carlsbad. She'll be here next week. I nodded. The relief I felt was physical. A loosening in my shoulders, a slowing of my heart rate. The past week had been the most exhausting of my life. I had barely slept. I had lost 8 pounds. My hands still shook when I wrote in the incident log. Thank you, I said. Kern looked at me. For what? For training me, for keeping me alive, for... I gestured vaguely at the break room, the cave, the invisible weight of everything I had experienced. Kern was silent for a moment. Then he opened the filing cabinet and pulled out a fresh folder. David Marsh left this for whoever replaced him, he said. I'm supposed to give it to you now that you've survived your first incident period. The folder contained a single page, handwritten in neat block letters. Notes for the new guide. You made it through your first real test. That's good. Most people don't. Here's what they won't tell you in the official protocols. The rules work, but they don't work forever. The cave remembers patterns. If you do the same thing the same way every night, eventually something notices. Change your routine slightly. Take a different route during maintenance. Vary your head count timing by a few seconds. Switch which hand you use for the radio. Small variations keep you unpredictable. The things in the cave aren't malevolent. They're not benevolent either. They're patterns. They respond to attention the way water responds to a thrown stone. Ripples outward. The rules minimize the ripples. But sometimes ripples happen anyway. If you see something that isn't covered by the rules, don't try to understand it. Don't document it beyond what's required. Don't tell anyone who doesn't need to know. The more attention you give something, the more real it becomes. The less attention you give it, the more likely it is to fade. Ellen Perry tried to understand. She categorized, analyzed, documented everything. She became an expert on the phenomena in the cave. And then one night, something became an expert on her. Don't be Ellen Perry. Follow the rules. Vary your routines. Keep your head down. Go home. Good luck. David Marsh. I read the note 3 times, then I folded it and put it in my pocket. I'm going to survive this job, I said. Kern almost smiled. That's the spirit. The new guide arrived on a Wednesday. Her name was Angela Chen. She was transferring from Carlsbad Caverns after 6 years of night shifts. She was quiet, competent, and carried her own backup flashlight without being asked. Kern gave her the standard orientation: locker, radio, map, protocols. He handed her the supplemental guidelines and watched her read them without speaking. When she finished, she looked up at Kern. Her expression was calm. Carlsbad had rules too, she said. Different ones, but the same idea. Kern nodded slowly. Most cave systems do. The Lichagilla Passage, the gypsums, the pool room after midnight. She paused. I know how this works. Good, then you know to follow the rules and not ask questions. Yes, sir. Angela shadowed me for 2 nights. She was methodical and precise. She counted heads obsessively, timed her radio check-ins to the second, and never looked at anything she wasn't supposed to look at. By the 3rd night, she was ready for solo tours. On her 4th night, she came to me in the break room with a question. The amendment about the 4th guide, she said. Rule 12. Night shift consists of 3 guides only. If there's a 4th, don't acknowledge them. Yes. What happens if you do acknowledge them? I thought about Ellen Perry's notes. I thought about Torres walking into his motel room and waking up in Arizona. I thought about the footsteps behind me in Gothic Avenue, matching my pace exactly. I don't know, I said, and I don't want to find out. Angela accepted this. She went back to her locker and finished preparing for her shift. That night, I ran a tour on the Domes and Dripstones route. 8 tourists, a family from Michigan, a group of college friends, a solitary traveler who said she was researching cave ecosystems for her doctoral thesis. I counted them at the entrance. 8. I counted them at the first junction. 8. I counted them at Mammoth Dome. 8. The tour was uneventful. I delivered the standard narration, answered questions about formations and wildlife, and maintained proper spacing in the narrow passages. The tourists took photographs. No one saw anything they weren't supposed to see. At 9:42 p.m., we returned to the visitor center. I documented the completion time, filed my report, and sat in the break room drinking coffee until Kern arrived for the maintenance walk. Quiet night, he said. Yes, that's how it should be. We walked the maintenance route together, checking markers and counting steps, and listening to the silence. The cave was still. The air was heavy and cold, the way it was supposed to be. No footsteps followed us. No lights flickered where they shouldn't. At the Audubon Junction, Kern stopped and looked at the steel grate blocking the Blackall Passage. The darkness beyond was absolute. Our headlamps couldn't penetrate more than 15 feet before the beam was swallowed. David Marsh walked down there once, Kern said, before he learned better. I know, you told me. Did I tell you what he said when he came back? He said the tunnel felt longer than it should have been. He counted more steps coming out than going in. Kern shook his head slowly. That's what he wrote in the report. What he told me, privately, was different. I waited. He said he saw himself down there, standing at the end of the tunnel, facing away. Same jacket, same headlamp, same posture. He called out, and the figure turned around. It was his face, exactly his face. But the eyes were wrong. They reflected the light like mirrors, flat and silver. Kern looked at me. His face was unreadable in the headlamp light. The figure started walking toward him. That's when he ran. He counted his steps because he was afraid to stop counting. If he stopped, he would have to think about what he had seen. The count was wrong because the tunnel changed while he was inside it, stretched or shifted or something. But the important thing is that he got out. He made it to the junction. He crossed the threshold. And the figure, gone. When he turned around at the junction, the tunnel was empty. Just darkness. I looked at the grate, at the warning sign, at the absolute blackness beyond. Why are you telling me this? Kern started walking again toward Broadway and the exit. Because David's gone now. Angela's only been here a week. That means you're the senior guide on night shift. If something happens to me, you need to know what you're dealing with. What am I dealing with? Kern didn't answer until we reached the rotunda. Then he stopped and turned to face me. The cave isn't haunted, he said. It's not full of ghosts or monsters or demons. It's something older than that. Something that was here before humans, before mammals, before anything that left a fossil record. It doesn't want anything. It doesn't hate us. It just exists. The same way and if you break the rules, then you stand out. You become visible, and something sees you. We walked the rest of the way in silence. At 4 a.m., Kern locked the historic entrance gate. Angela had already clocked out and headed back to her motel. I stayed in the break room, writing my shift notes, thinking about everything Kern had told me. Before I left, I opened the filing cabinet and pulled out Ellen Perry's folder. The notes were extensive, dozens of pages spanning years. Ellen had documented everything: sounds, temperatures, timings, distances, patterns in the anomalies she observed. She had theories, hypotheses about the nature of what lived in the cave, how it perceived the world, what triggered its responses. The notes were brilliant and thorough and completely insane. On the last page, the entry from March 12th, 1992. Her handwriting was different, rushed, almost frantic. March 12th, 1992. They're not separate things. The footsteps, the voices, the figures, the lights. They're all the same thing. One thing, distributed through the cave, wearing different faces. It sees through all of them. It hears through all of them. When you look at them, you're looking at it. When you talk to them, you're talking to it. The rules work because they teach you to ignore it, to treat it like it's not there. And if you ignore it long enough, you become invisible. But if you study it, if you pay attention, if you try to understand. The entry stopped mid-sentence. I closed the folder and put it back in the cabinet. That was 6 months ago. I still work nights at Mammoth Cave. Kern is still here, older and grayer, but still precise. Angela runs the historic route and handles the maintenance walks with military efficiency. We've had 3 new guides since Torres. 2 of them quit within the first month. The third is still here, learning the rules, following procedures, not asking questions. I don't document anything beyond what's required. I don't investigate anomalies. I don't theorize about what lies in the dark. I follow the rules and I vary my routines and I keep my head down. Most nights, nothing happens. The cave is silent and still and beautiful in its ancient way. The tourists come and go. The maintenance walks are uneventful. The radio check-ins follow protocol. Some nights, I hear footsteps behind me that match my pace exactly. I don't turn around. I don't speed up. I walk steadily toward the nearest exit, and I count my steps, and I don't think about what might be following. Some nights, I see a light in the distance that shouldn't be there. I note the time and location, and I walk the other way. I don't investigate. I don't wonder who's carrying the light. Some nights, a tourist's headlamp turns red for no reason. I end the tour early, and I evacuate through the nearest emergency exit, and I file the report exactly as required. I've prepared a document for whoever replaces me. It's in the filing cabinet, in a folder marked Transition Notes. The document contains the current rules, all 31 of them, including the original 12, the amendments, the emergency protocols, and 6 new rules that we've added based on incidents over the past year. The first rule is the same as always. Conduct head count at the start of every tour, and again when entering or exiting any chamber. The number must match. If the number does not match, proceed to the nearest emergency exit immediately, without acknowledging the discrepancy verbally. The last rule is new. I wrote it myself after an incident in February. Rule 31. If you find yourself in a passage you don't recognize, stop immediately. Do not continue forward. Do not backtrack. Stand still and count to 60 slowly. If the passage looks familiar after 60 seconds, proceed to the nearest known junction. If it still looks unfamiliar after 60 seconds, radio for help and wait. Do not move until backup arrives. Do not turn off your headlamp. Do not speak to anyone who approaches unless they give the current shift countersign. The cave is old. The things in the cave are old. The rules work because generations of guides have died or disappeared or gone insane learning what not to do. We're the survivors. We're the ones who followed procedures and didn't ask questions and kept our heads down. I'm writing these notes at 3:47 a.m. on a Thursday in April. Outside the break room window, the parking lot is empty. The visitor center is dark except for the security lights. In 12 minutes, Kern will lock the historic entrance gate and the night shift will be over. Tomorrow, a new guide arrives. Transfer from Wind Cave in South Dakota. I'll give them the standard orientation, locker, radio, map, protocols. I'll hand them the supplemental guidelines and watch them read. If they ask questions, I'll tell them what Kern told me. Follow the rules. Don't ask why. Just follow. And if they're smart, they will. The cave is quiet tonight. The air is still. No footsteps in the distance. No lights where there shouldn't be lights. Just the ancient silence and the slow drip of water and the weight of 100 miles of limestone pressing down from above. I count my steps when I walk the maintenance routes. I time my radio check-ins to the second. I conduct head counts at every junction, and I do not look at anything I'm not supposed to look at. The rules work. I don't need to know why.